What up, my freaks? RuinusInsight here, welcoming you to the very last part of my Total War Warhammer 3 modded Nakai the Wanderer Old World campaign. So we have reached the end of this particular campaign. The interest did drop a little bit earlier than I perhaps would have expected, but I mean, it wasn't unpredictable. Nakai being a horde faction and all that, and granted, we've taken a lot of territory before I say anything else, but yeah, Nakai is a horde faction, and the problem with factions like this is that you effectively can't lose. There's no tension, and you don't even really have borders, even though your vassal does. We could lose all of our vassal territory, and it wouldn't matter one bit. It's essentially a sort of sandbox screwing around type of campaign, which does make sense in terms of, you know, there not being a clear objective. Though, speaking of objectives, in this last episode, we will be looking to wipe out the Awakened and the Caravan of Blue Roses to achieve our actual victory. And yes, I should have been doing that throughout the course of the campaign, but I've been having too much fun just sort of screwing around and using all those Lizardmen units. Horde faction it may be, but Lizardmen units are just such a blessing, such a fun thing, fun set of units to enjoy. I think the only two units that we really haven't had a sort of a lot of experience with in this particular campaign are obviously the Coatl and the Dread Saurian, and they will definitely feature through several battles in this final episode. And speaking of the final episode, the way I usually do these is this: to give the faction a proper send-off, we will no longer be doing regular turns, but rather time skips, wherein I go through the turns sort of off-screen, and then we just do sort of highlight big battles against various opponents, so that we maximize the good stuff, basically. And we'll definitely have some of the Ripperdactyls getting into some fights. Obviously, Nakai being just absolutely insane. I mean, he's basically unstoppable. Look at his stats. And on top of the fact that we made him more than twice as fast as he normally is, he's just 150 charge. What a glorious lord. Anyway, we are going to do the time skips. And the first battle for this last episode will be Cricket, but really Lord Croak, with his not quite full stack versus Epidemius and this stack with lots of these Plague Ogres, and the full elite garrison of the Great Tree here. So all of this versus us at the same time. I'm gonna end the turn. We're gonna start this with a good big fight. Go. Alright, that was quick. Fortunately, Epidemius is a very sort of low in the turn order. And yeah, 3 stacks. And Epidemius, of course, will supercharge all of those Plague Bearers of his. We got 5264 melee defense on the Exalted Plague Bearers of Nurgle. They are of similar... Actually, they have better stats than our Temple Guard do. Damn. The only thing they have lower is the weapon strength, but they counteract that with having their powerful ranged weapons. They have more armor than Temple Guard. 77. Damn. Epidemius certainly makes these guys pretty darn strong. Anyway, should be a pretty darn fun fight. They may be strong Plague Bearers, but they're not Lord Croak. Ooh. Although, Lord Croak, you've lost a lot of your mana. Huh. I didn't realize that. Uh-oh. I have some concerns. Go. Alrighty, here we go. Beneath the Great Plague Tree, we will make the sort of, not final stand, but rather the final battle for Lord Croak. I believe we have like 10 different armies or something like that running around, and each one will be getting a big final battle against multiple stacks, as is the plan. And 3 stacks versus Lord Croak's Temple Guard should be pretty darn fun. You gotta love Temple Guard, though. They're such a fantastic looking unit, and the Star Chamber Guardians in particular with those glowing halberds of theirs look pretty amazing. Lord Croak is in the center of the sort of Temple Guard box with his Sacred Guardians, i.e. the Sacred Kroxigors, and his 2 healing Reviv crystals to his side. Between the Reviv crystals, his recovery, and his regeneration, he's got a lot of potential healing on him, though his HP isn't crazy high at only 7k, so still could potentially take a fair bit of damage if he gets hit hard. And we have seen him get hit pretty darn hard before by the Exalted Plague Bearers. AI does know to try to target him. 98 melee attack as well, and 1.1k weapon strength. Actually trying to attack Lord Croak in melee, while you can certainly damage him because he has no melee defense, still will mean you probably will get hit very hard, which is neat. Anyway, here we go. We have arrived with our box. Our Temple Guard are surrounding the center. And it almost looked like that Plague Ridden moved in for a second, but I guess it decided not to. All right. Oh, actually, I didn't know where it's going. Our little skink priest here, for some reason, while moving with the rest of the army, got stuck in the trees. I guess it's because it's a large model, and and it was on the ground, so the trees slowed it down. Gotta love the lighting here. Realm of Nurgle may be gross and puke green and all that, but the lighting is still pretty darn nice. Anyway, those guys are going to get a little bit of fighting in while Epidemius sort of leads his vanguard, one of the units of Plague Bearers and some Plague Ogres, into the fray. And our 2 Sacred Guardian units, the Temple Guard and the Sacred Kroxigors, will break the charge, as the enemy probably doesn't have enough mass to, break through them. It's not like they've got toad dragons or anything like that. So good luck getting through all this. And here we go. First of the enemy Exalted Plague Bearers have arrived and are attacking Lord Croak's body. He's going to lose his barrier basically in 3 volleys, but just as he starts taking damage, we'll activate the Supreme Shield of the Old Ones. And, were those Furies going to try to touch down and attack either Lord Croak or the Sacred Kroxigors in the midst of his formation? I don't think that's going to pan out super well. There we go, and the Furies are pretty much destroyed. Plenty more enemies where that came from, however, and the enemies are starting to blob up, so here comes the first Deliverance of Itza. I believe that was a 2nd tier, right in the midst of the enemy army. Of course, we don't have all that much mana, but we do have various mana buffs, Enlightened and Star Chamber Guardian and whatever. Or is it Star Guardian? Several things that give us mana even when we don't have a lot. So our power reserve will keep recharging even if we don't start with a lot of power reserves. So we should be pretty okay. And there we go, and the enemy tide still being held back. I think our Skink Chief has finally, or Skink Priest rather, has finally made it into the midst of our formation. Alright, and tactically this army is pretty simple. Just hold the enemies back and don't let them hit the center wherein Lord Croak is. And eventually he'll just get more Deliverance of Itzas off. Epidemius is in, well, not quite the center, and is being attacked by Cricket, who is the lord of the army. He doesn't have a Carnosaur, but frankly, being on a horned one probably makes more sense when fighting Epidemius, as the Carnosaur would tower over him. Besides, there's a bunch of Sacred Kroxies bonking away at him, though not for much longer, as Epidemius is down to about 10% of his HP. And a couple more bonks, and down he'll go. Lovely. Lord Croak getting absolutely focused down now, down to about 30-40% of his HP. We've seen that happen to him before, but that's alright, as we'll just activate another Supreme Shield of the Old Ones, and that's maximum missile resistance available, and just back him off slightly. The enemy's range is fairly short after all. We also have a decent amount of spell resistance and damage resistance between the Supreme Shield of the Old Ones, and I'd like to think that the Wrath of Sri Lanka, or Storm of Sri Lanka, whatever this ability is called, the Army-bound ability, also comes from Lord Croak. Though I think throughout this finale episode, I'm probably going to limit the usage of the the army-bound abilities, whether it be the summoning or the storm, and just to let the armies enjoy their final fights a little bit more. Alright, and here comes another Deliverance in the midst of an enemy blob of Plague Bearers, and the units of Plague Drones were hovering overhead. They got slightly clipped by that, looks like about 10% of their HP. And we've also got Summon Nakai. I knew that hop, skip, and jump anywhere. And unfortunately, Mr. Epidemius died as Nakai got summoned, but Nakai can still wade into the formation, and he does have his buff, the Primal Roar, which is plus 40 melee attack. The physical resistance buff is not relevant because most of the enemies are demons and thus do magical damage. Though they take magical damage as well. There we go, another deliverance, basically killing off all the Nurglings in there and then severely damaging at least to the Plague Bearers. It looks like the enemy's numbers are to some degree starting to dwindle. Their reinforcements have stopped, so all of the remaining units are on field now, and we were safe to break formation as all of the Temple Guard and Sacred Kroxigors have now moved forward. Just a matter of time now. Without a healer supporting them, I wouldn't give the win to Plague Bearer or Exalted Plague Bearers over Temple Guard. Sure, if they had a heal, but they had to rely only on a Cloud of Flies, and I think we have more than enough buffs on our units. Though they are getting hit by debuffs as well: lethal poison, poison, and Plague of Nurgle. I love stacking debuffs and stacking poisons and auras and all that sort of stuff. So it is nice to see. I'm definitely gonna do a little bit of that next time I end up playing Nurgle myself. Alright, and there's another deliverance. The battle is just about ours. The bounce power has shifted to about 80% in our favor. They're still trying to go after Lord Croak, not having realized that it is futile at this point. He's up to, wow, he's up to 300,000 damage. I mean, he is the damage dealer of this army, even though plenty of the units in this army are perfectly capable of dishing out damage. We've still designed this army in a way that lets Lord Croak shine, which is absolutely as it should be. And it lets the Sacred Kroxigors shine a little bit as well, and I like to see them fighting together with the Temple Guard. It's sort of the elite infantry and monstrous infantry combination of the faction. All magical damage on both, and plenty of tankiness. I mean, I guess the regular Temple Guard don't have magical damage, but the Sacred Kroxis make up for it. Anyway, yet another deliverance of Eatz's, and the enemy is just about done for. The bounce power's 95%. The Plague Ogres have shattered, and since they've shattered, it's time to begin summoning these guys. Mostly been summoning just to use them to chase enemies down. Well, the rest of the army is busy, especially the shattered units like Plague Ogres, who are not going to be able to chase them down, so might as well let the little Razor Dons do a little bit of work. Alright, deliverance of Itza around the remaining Sacred Kroxis. And it is also nice that we got some of these Sacred Kroxis originally from Nakai's army, like Krokbulls and whichever of the other ones is in here, Ghostbusters, in this particular army. Nakai trained them up, and this way we still got Kroxigors in this army as well, since he's a Kroxigor lord. Anyway, last of the enemy units on field is going to be that Soul Grinder of Nurgle, but it is not in a good place. Completely surrounded, and it has no hope of dishing out any damage. This thing used almost all of its ammunition throughout the battle, just firing its artillery blasts at us, but fortunately that Supreme Shield of the Old Ones kept our units safe with that 100% missile resistance. Granted, maxed out at 75, but still quite a bit. Gross, great tree up here. Anyway, Realm of Nurgle battle, pretty darn cool, you gotta admit. Lovely to have visited here, even if the territory is all completely useless to us. But we're here just for fun, and to see the sights. We bid farewell to Lord Croak and his pizzas. Yeah, Lichbone Pennant. Probably didn't need it at this point in time, but still always a nice thing to find. Anyway, Lord Croak absolutely absolutely ridiculous caster. 340,000 damage, even with only 59 mana. He has enough sort of casting boosts that he can still regenerate enough Winds of Magic Power Reserve to just keep on casting through the course of the battle anyway, deleting a full third of the enemy army in terms of pure kills, and probably in terms of gold value and damage dealt, outdoing everybody else by such a significant margin that they stood no chance. 35,000 damage, 58,000 damage, 45,000 damage on some of the Sacred Croxigores, Ghostbusters, Crocodile Dundees, and Unchained Chomps and Crocbulls all did great. The latter two were the ones that were guarding Lord Croak through most of the battle, and these two were on the front lines, so that makes sense in terms of the slight disparity in their damage. Still, I think the entire set of units together didn't do as much damage as Lord Croak, but you know what? That's what you come to expect from him. Anyway, a really, really nice fight, and somehow I doubt we're going to get a better, or at least more numerous foe in the land of Nurgle, or in the realm of Nurgle, so this probably, having defeated his champion here, probably takes him out. Anyway, one loss, by the way. It doesn't really matter. Money. Alrighty, it looks like no other enemy or no other faction. Oh, we get research rate from this as well. That's nice. I mean, we don't need it at this point, but it's still nice. We also got the immunity to contact effects on Cricket, which is actually pretty fantastic. Definitely gotta appreciate that one. Enumerators and Carnosaur for Cricket as a reward as well. Mukwalan is... I don't know who Mukwalan is, or who any of you are, to be perfectly frank. There's too many heroes to keep track of who's who and where. Oh, you're in this army. Should you be on the flyer instead? I mean, both are fine. I think I kind of like you on the flyer more in this particular situation, little skink priest of heaven. So let's put you on that pterodon right back. Anyway, as I was saying, not going to do the sort of admin stuff. Oh, confederation between Grimgor's Ardboys and Drippenfangs. I was looking to get a duel between Grimgor and Mr. Nakai. We'll see if we can make that happen soon. Anyway, like I said, it's a finale episode, and that means in the finale we are going to be doing cuts. So here comes the first cut. See you guys at the next fight. Alright, here we go. Chameleon is going to be second on the menu in terms of getting us some fighting. We've got the Ripperdactyl Riders facing off against 2.5 stacks of Skaven, and some good stuff in here for Plague Claws. We got the big ol' Hell Pit Abomination, Storm Vermin, bunch of Plague Monks, 2 units of Rat Ogres, Warp Flayers, just the obnoxious number of enemy heroes, 1, 4, 9, 9 Lords and Heroes, and 2 Doom Wheels as well. Should be a pretty darn fun debut battle for these guys. Let's see if they survive. Go. Alright, here we go. Lord Croak got to face off against 3 stacks of Nurglites, and we'll get to face off against 2.5 stacks of Skaven with Chameleon here, though I might not make this his final battle. I think I might do another one for him, simply because while I don't really like Ripperdactyls as units, at least in campaign. Fine in multiplayer, but they're... yeah, anyway. And because of that, I didn't use them throughout this campaign, really, and I didn't use them very much in previous campaigns, so I think they get to thus get the chance to get at least 2 final battles. So I guess we'll do 11 battles in this particular campaign, or in this particular finale, rather than 10. Anyway, speaking of the Ripperdactyls, our Skink Chief will lead them in with the Colossadon Hunters in particular. We're going to immediately pop the Protection of Quetzal on them while they get surrounded by Plague Monks and stuff, and the enemy gets distracted by them. They are technically anti-infantry. At least this way they won't suffer too much damage. We wait a little bit until the rest of the Ripperdactyls arrive, and then we give them all the Vison's Wild Form, giving them 40 armor and a 40% base weapon damage increase. The armor going from basically low-mid to high-mid, or even high, makes it so they're a lot less fragile in the oppressive units like this. Alright. And the main thing I expected them to do was tear through enemy range units and tear them to shreds, but here it's not really super needed. And, ooh, enemy's gonna get a Warp Lightning down upon us. Hopefully that doesn't knock out any of these guys. No, we're okay. And it looks like they did good work tearing through most of the enemy main blob before any of our reinforcements arrived, so at least the Ripperdactyls already got the chance to shine a little bit. Of course, this is just the army outside the settlement, and we've got 2 more stacks moving in. And these are just mostly Skaven slaves as well, a couple of Plague Monks and stuff interspersed, so they were never going to be a crazy threat. There was a Doom Wheel in there. I think there were actually 2 Doom Wheels in there, unless I'm mistaken. But anyway, and we are going to make sure that that Doom Wheel doesn't come back by summoning a unit of Razordons, and there we go, immediately destroying it. I really do like using these guys to prevent enemies from escaping. Anyway, with that, the reinforcements have made it onto the map, and we're onto the battlefield, and there's a lot of elites. The main annoying thing, however, is that they've got just so freaking many warlocks. We can speak 3 warlocks right here, each one of which has Howling Warp Gale, and then there's a Grey Seer of Ruin, which also has Howling Warp Gales. All of our flyers basically can't really go near them here, which is, well, it sucks to be the flyers, I guess. Plus, some of them have the Howling Warp Gale sort of visuals stuck on them, which really isn't helping as well, because it's hard to tell which ones can move and which ones can't move. But hey, what can you do? Anyway, looks like a couple of the clan rats or Skaven slaves here, and Plague Monks have come back. Okay, well, the Plague Monks never routed because they're unbreakable, but the clan rats and Skaven slaves at least have come back. And these guys will foolishly attempt to charge in towards our Blessed Saurus warriors. Good luck with that, little Plague Monks. You got a lot of melee attack, but you're not breaking the line of Saurus. And we got a dino even out there. And ooh, that was actually smart. They moved the Plague Monks in to get a Warp Bomb off. It doesn't kill off any of the Blessed Saurus Warriors, but actually a pretty solid move. Plague Monks are pretty great carriers for Warp Bombs. Though again, if you're willing to destroy units. If you're not willing to destroy your own units, then maybe not so much. Alrighty, and we are going to get a Storm of Sri Lanka going here. I did say that we're going to do 2 battles in this particular army in this finale, so why not? Clear out a few of those rats. Right in the midst of the blob, this is only going to hurt the basic units, the clan rats, the Skaven slaves, the stuff that wasn't really a threat to us anyway. All of the elite units will be fine, and all of the range units will by and large be untouched. Gotta make sure to focus down those Poison Wind Globadiers and Death Globes, and then start heading towards the enemy range in the back line. Anyway, here come the enemy, a Plague Hell, or Plague Hell, Hell Pit Abomination. I'm moving with the tide. Funnily enough, this is kind of echoing the fight against the Nurglites to some degree. Obviously, there's some overlap between Nurgle and Skaven. Alright, and it looks like some Rad Ogres have made it in with the Plague Monks and Hell Pit Abomination, and our unit here of Legion of Chakwa is just going to have to hold them off. Ooh, and they're about to take a big hit from a Warp Lightning right in the midst of their formation, which ain't so great. Yeah, decent hit there. Alright, in the meantime, however, to try to avoid all of those howling warp gales, we are moving all of the Riperdactyls essentially separately from each other. Here, the Colossadon Hunters are being led alone into the fray by our Skink Chief, and if the enemy wants to trap just those 2 units in place, it's more than welcome. And we're doing the same thing here with 2 more, and the same thing here with 2 more. So, and good luck to the enemy with those howling warp gales of theirs. It looks like the Death Globes are in range, and they're starting to hit our Blessed Saurus Spears. That's not so great, because that's a fairly big threat. And we're going to try to rush towards them. Another Warp Bomb comes down, but it looks like that one hasn't achieved all that much. There's still plenty of Skaven down here, eh? Well, there's plenty of Skaven everywhere, I guess. Alright, and the Rat Ogres are impressively still around, though they are shaken and down to about half of their HP. They've only lost about 4 of their models, and we still have a fair few of them to work through. We're going to move our second dino, our second Reviv Crystal in here, so that the dinos can heal each other, not just the Saurus Warriors, and it looks like we've started to surround the remaining enemies here, though the single entities, the big boys, still have to be brought down. Doomiel's down to about half HP, but it looks like we're slowly but surely making our way through the enemy back line. Now the Colossadon Hunters and the Skink Chief have torn through 2 of the enemy artillery pieces, though a couple of our units of other Riperdactyls are now stuck. And these guys are not stuck, they just have the visual on them, the visual effect. Alright, Balance of Power is at about 70% in our favor now. And it looks like we forced the Death Globe and Poison Winds to rout, and we're just trying to surround and destroy the enemy Plague Monks that are all unbreakable and have to be killed to a rat. Alright, didn't quite get to do this, the whole hammer and anvil thing that we were originally planning with this army, but it wasn't really possible due to the presence of so many Howling Warp Gale toting Warlocks and Grey Seers. And that's alright, the Riperdactyls are upset about it too, and they're going to try to go after those Warlock Engineers around and destroy them, since they're not particularly strong in melee. Looks like all the enemy artillery are out now, as the Riperdactyls have torn them to shreds. And now they cannot fire upon our units of Saurus Warriors as they hold back the tide. Lovely. And besides, the Riperdactyls got to lead in the fight as well by moving into that first arm. Anyway, with that, the enemy's main host shatters and only the unbreakable units remain, and they're certainly not going to outlast our buffed Saurus with the Reviv Crystals, keeping them alive and healthy. And counteracting the plagues and poisons of Clan Pestilence, I'd wager. Alright, tactically there's nothing left to just surround and destroy the remaining units, and I think that might have been the last. Oh, wait, there might be something here still. Alright, I don't think those are Plague Monks, I think those are just running units, and with that, the enemy army is done, and the battle is ours. Nice work. I think the most damage we took was from the Warp Lightnings and the Warp Bomb, but that, you know, generally just tends to be the case when fighting Skaven. All right, there we go. A really fun debut for the sort of Saurus, Anvil, and Ripperdactyl Hammer army. I readily admit that this is probably the worst possible army for us to have debuted against, because they had one, let's see, 2, 3, 4, I think. Or possibly 5, it depends on which of the Graciers were Ruin and which ones were Plague. But anyway, there was so much Howling Warp Gale going around. And while we did separate our Ripperdactyls, they still had to have a rather difficult time maneuvering around it. Still, the Colossedon Hunters racked up 386 kills and 25,000 damage, vastly outdoing pretty much everything else in the pile of units, at least in terms of kills, and quite a bit in terms of damage as well. So, a great job to them, and just a genuinely fun battle. We'll heal up, and then I guess we will destroy this particular location. Technically we were headed towards Luther Harkin, but I figured we should probably stop on by and enjoy this fight, because we're right there after all. Enemy killed in battle, and also sorry Eltharion, I guess we'll be picking this one up ourselves. Like so. And we'll give this to, I don't know, Weetzel. Alright, very nice. And then you can use this territory to heal up before heading out to Luther Harkin. Frankly, Agro Migdal, yeah, there's no way that a rat of Black Chasm is going to be able to take this, so you can start freely moving towards Mr. Luther Harkin. He is our campaign objective, or at least one of them, after all. Anyway, really fun fight for those guys. See you at the next one. Alright, here we go, round 3, and as I've mentioned in the finale, we only take the choice battles, leaving out all the auto-resolves and all the admin, and I think this will be a pretty darn choice battle, possibly final battle for the Cavalry army, as the Cavalry army has run into 4 full stacks of vampire counts. It should be a pretty decisive, definitive, etc. battle for all of these guys, and I think it's going to be a good one. Let's get to it. Alright, here we go. It took a little bit of searching, but this is going to be a fantastic final fight for our all-cavalry army, and, well, the Carnosaurs as well, but they're kind of part of it. They can keep pace, and they're just looking like the bigger versions of the Horned ones and Cold ones anyway. Anyway, 4 stacks of undead against all cavalry. We'll see how well this goes. Frankly, this is actually a fairly good sort of enemy army to stand against piles of cab, because that's a heck of a tar pit. Anyway, gonna get the first charge in and through those zombies. Beautiful. And the Horned ones do good work. And neither the zombies nor the skeletons are going to have a particularly good time doing damage to them, especially if we can keep them nicely buffed up. The main issue, of course, is once again that tar pitting issue. The charge knocks about 25% of the HP off those units, and the same thing is repeating itself all over the map. But charge doing heavy damage to them or not, that's then the charge bonus gone, and that's a lot of units we're going to have to deal with. And the numbers are such that the tar pitting will ensure that we can't really easily sort of move out of the press and then cycle charge in the way that we're doing on the flanks, where the enemy doesn't have as big a concentration of units. Anyway, enemy reinforcements have arrived, and my lord, there's a lot of units coming in. Alright, just trying to do as much damage to these zombos before the sort of elite units arrive. Feral Cold Ones waited until we got the initial charge with the units of Horned Ones and Cold One Spear Riders. And as soon as that charge was done, we of course sent in our piles of Feral Cold Ones. Which also originally started in Cytochrom's army, but they've been doing pretty good here as well. Alright. Anyway, looks like we've got those enemies moving in. Gonna try to clear at least a few of those zombies out with Stormer Shalonka. I think there's not any reason not to do so. We also have 2 of the Feral Carnos, as well as our Skink Oracle riding around with our Lord here, who's in the sort of center of the enemy formation, and the other 2 Feral Carnosaurs are each on the flanks. Gotta prepare for when those Blood Knights arrive, when the Terrorgeist comes in, when the Vargeist comes in, and allow us to counteract them, countercharge them, etc. with those Carnosaurs. Speaking of countercharging, looks like we've got an enemy unit of Cav here as well, Black Knights. I do believe there's a decent number of Black Knights and Blood Knights amongst the enemy army, so they got a fairly decent cavalry force themselves. Though luckily, between the anti-large of the Cold One Spear Riders and the anti-large of the Feral Carnosaur, those guys get torn to shreds pretty darn quick, the Black Knights at least. Probably won't be able to do the same thing quite as easily to the enemy Blood Knights when they arrive. Alrighty, and it looks like there are more enemies where that came from. Go figure. Plenty more, I should say. We are still just hovering over around 2 stacks. And here come those Vargeists going to touch down, or attempt to touch down right in the center of our Cold One Spear Riders. Probably do a decent bit of damage on the charge. The Vargeists may be fragile, but they also can do quite a bit of damage. And it looks like these best Cold One Spears are down to nearly half of their HP. The Carnosaur is helping, but there's more monstrous infantry where that came from, as some Warngulls arrive as well. And I see a few of the Cold One Spear Riders going down in the press. Definitely going to help them out. Going to drop the protection of Quetzal on them, as it was definitely needed, as they started to take too much damage and are down below half HP at this point. Center line is still very much in the fight. More monstrous infantry are there, trying to hunt down those Morngulls with our Carnosaurs, who are using their mass to move through the enemy formations in a way that our cavalry cannot, and try to knock out those monstrous infantry before they do too much damage to our Cav. Now, speaking of the Cav, while the Cold One Spear Riders and Feral Cold Ones are doing the whole cycle charge thing and attempting to back out of the press where they can, our Horned Ones are essentially stuck. We're using them as mainline troops in this particular battlefield. They are much tankier and have much lower unit numbers compared to the Cold One Spear Riders, so much less likely to die. And they're just going to have to do their best to hold back the tide. We got to keep these guys at least somewhat pinned in place. A, and B, they're just way too trapped and surrounded by units. There's no way they're getting out of that. Alright, on the bright side, it looks like we managed to make the enemy's right flank here in the woods collapse, although the sort of center has divided itself into 2 separate lines. Gonna try to help out a little bit with the Raptor Rumble and another unit of the Feral Cold Ones here. Try to move in and knock out a few more of those zombies and destroy this element of the enemy tar pit. I'm very glad that we're fighting this particular battle in the Darklands, because it is still very nice and visible. And I'd hate for this just gigantic undead army to not have been seen. Alright, looks like a black coach has moved in. What do we have? We still have a Terrorgeist, Karen Wraiths, 2 more Vargeists, another black coach. Yeah, we still got lots of elites coming. The battle is nowhere near over, though the balance of power is currently in our favor as more elite enemy units make their way onto the battlefield. I do believe that that'll change. Just keep on fighting. And everybody's going to rack up massive amounts of kills. And we can see the charge isn't able to move through the enemy formation, and just the sheer amount of units just stop the charge in its tracks, which is pretty neat to see. A very sort of hectic battlefield here. And though the Horned Ones are doing a pretty darn good job holding the line, they've started to take a little bit of damage. Going to pop a few Earthbloods on them to heal them up. Move a few of the Cold One Spear Riders in to help out. At least on the edges of the tar pit, where they hopefully won't get trapped in the way that the Horned Ones are. Like, you're not, like, this guy's not getting out of this. There's no way it can, move. Ooh, what do we have here? We have our 2 feral carnosaurs, and we're Skink Oracle moving in. They're going after doggos now, but I believe they charged a monstrous infantry or something of that nature. Maybe, I think it might have been the black coach or a, not a pump wagon, a corpse cart. Whatever it was, it's done for now, and they're working on the enemy fast movers. Carnosaur's still having a good time doing that whole, terrier head shake thing. As they tear through those infantry units. Lots of bones to go around, so we can certainly play fetch with the Carnos. There we go. Aw, they look like they're having so much fun. Frankly, just by virtue of that, they might have been good with Nakai's army as well. Nakai can do his hop, skip, and a jump, and then the Carnosaurs can do their anti-infantry animations as well. Or, yeah, there we go, that's the one. Beautiful. Alright, and here come the enemy elites. The Blood Knights have arrived at last, the Cairn Wraiths have arrived, and we've just got a few more of the super elites coming in. More Blood Knights, that Terrorgeist, Crypt Horrors as well. Frankly, the enemy army could have really used some more Crypt Horrors interspersed among this massive tar pit. It would have made them a lot more effective. A few corpse carts and a few Crypt Horrors would have made this big old enemy blob just devastatingly difficult to deal with. But alas, the AI doesn't really understand how to make good compositions for the undead, which need a little bit more attention towards it because they're kind of specific in the way that they function. Anyway, here comes the Terrorgeist, gonna immediately pop off that Terrorgeist Shriek, debuffing everybody with a massive 15% reduction in defense and 50% reduction in speed, meaning that they, would have even more a difficult time getting out of there. Our Skink Oracle moves to countercharge the Terrorgeist and attacks it, and our Carnosaurs are trying to get through the press to go after the Terrorgeist as well. The Terrorgeist Shriek also does damage over time, so it having landed right in the center of our blob means not such great things in terms of taking damage, and we popped off another heal. Fortunately, the Terrorgeist, Earthblood, the Terrorgeist is just about done for. About 20% of its HP was remaining, a couple more hits, and one of the Terrorgeists should bring it down. Not bring it down to Earth because it's already stuck in the same way that we've been stuck in the center of the battlefield. The Blood Knights are on field as well, but we're hunting them with our anti-large Cold One Spear Riders and our Carnosaurs in the same way that we've been doing with the other monstrous infantry. And how long have we been brawling? Nearly 10 minutes straight. It does feel appropriate to fight the undead like this. Fighting just the one army never feels right when you're supposed to be facing off against massive hordes. Feral Cold Ones surrounding some Vargeists. Probably a pretty bad matchup for the Cold Ones, so we gotta be careful with them. They are down to about half of their HP, the Raptor Tide here. But I'm sure that some of the undead are learning to fear the Raptor Tide, as we can see those Blood Knights going down beneath it. Alright, and now the enemy army finally begins to dwindle. The balance power shifts to 100% in our favor, and the Horned Ones do manage to hold off the tar pit. And while the enemy's right and left flanks did collapse, they sort of created new sort of flanks with cut off elements of their center, and just still another tar pit. It's tar pits all the way down. And always nice to fight the undead in these sort of like, I don't know, swampy, disgusting water territories. Not quite as nice as in the sort of dead marshes, but those maps tend to be a little bit darker, and I like how visible everything is in this one. So there we go. Unsurprisingly, a heroic victory due to the sheer amount of units cleared out by our Cav army. Fantastic final fight for them. Alright, there we go. The 488 versus the 11,000. See, sees the dinos victorious, the cold ones, rather, and specifically. Very, very nice fight. Our horned ones of the various types did manage to be tanky enough with the heals coming in from the Skink Oracle to act as the tanks in this particular army, and racked up many a kill from 80,000, 60,000, 64,000, etc. All doing pretty good. The Blessed Cold One Spear Riders, and generally speaking, the Cold One Spear Riders were no slouches either. In fact, this one getting 67,000 and damaging all but one of the units of horned ones. And these guys were hunting the enemy large units, whether it be the Morngulls, the Knights, the etc, etc, etc. Carnosaurs, 50k, 35k, 53k, 30k, pretty darn solid as well, both wading into the fray and killing the enemy lords, and the Terrorgeist, the Blood Knights, and actually the Black Coach got brought down by Feral Cold Ones, and the Blood Knights and Black Knights, basically all the larger units. And lastly, of course, the Feral Cold Ones, Raptor Rumble, Raptor Tide, both managed to sort of stay in once the sort of big amount of damage was dealt by the charges of the Cav. The War Beasts, the Feral Cold Ones, went in and kept the enemy busy while the Cav went off to do other things. A very, very fun fight, and minimal losses at 63, a little bit over 10% though, so, and good job to the AI on that. Lovely. Well, kill and eat. And I do believe this was probably the last territory that... Yeah, Divine Plague of Protection, sure. So Mr. Hoshital has... the Ancient Steg now. Now, the problem with him... Nah, he's got to go on the Feral Cold, the Horned one, rather. I'd actually like him on the Steg, it's just that he doesn't really have enough mass on the Horned one to sort of reposition himself in a blob of undead like he was there. But at the same time, this is our Cav army, and, you know, it's got to be Cav. So, yeah, anyway. We can give this to, I don't know, Sri Lanka. Very nice. Although, funnily enough, we didn't use Storm of Sri Lanka in that battle at all, nor the summons. Just had to do it the old-fashioned way with all of our Cav. Anyway, that was a pretty great fight. This faction is destroyed, as this Black Sands territory will be auto-resolved, and we won't be seeing them again. This irks the heck out of me, I gotta say. Fort Red Cloud alone in the midst of our territory. But anyway, fun fight, and definitely won't be getting a better one for the Cav army, I think. So that was probably their finale. See you at the next one. Alrighty, we're back, and here at the Shrine of the Mighty Flame does our Fire Army under Pyroxy face off against two of the enemy stacks of Vampire Counts, a much more elite pile of units than the Cavalry Army ran into, at least in the form of their, well, not so much Chav, but their basic units. Tons and tons and just tons of Graveguard all over the place. How effective that's going to be against the fire units, I would wager not so much due to the fire weakness and their slowness, but it should still be a pretty darn fun fight and allow the fireworks to shine. Go. Alright, here we go. Final fight for the Fire Army. Gonna face off against two undead stacks, but still going to have to be very, very careful here. Unlike some of the other armies, this army was designed to fight one-on-one, not against multiple enemy stacks, which is why we have only 4 units of melee. You may recall that the Salamander hunting packs are extremely fragile in melee, and if they get surrounded, which is a pretty good chance here, and are forced into melee, they're going to start taking massive damage. Anyway, we're going to start the battle off with a little bit of fire damage from those ancient salamanders. They got plenty of AoE on them, and a little bit of work from the Basties with solar engines as well. I wish you wouldn't miss like that. We need every single ability to hit right now, and try to knock those bats out of the sky as well, although the precursor weapons of the Chameleon Stalkers are a little bit wasted on these guys. and best used against more important units, as the bats are weak enough that they're probably not even a threat to the weakened melee salamanders. Anyway, here come the first of the enemy blobs, going to start taking damage from all of the fire type stuff. Well, unfortunately, we don't have Kindle Flame on Pyroxy, as the points have been limited in this army so far. But all good, that'll just keep the battle more interesting. Anyway, looks like the Hex Wraiths do charge in, and we immediately pop that protection of Quetzal on the Chameleon Stalkers here. Definitely don't want a Hex Wraith charge into them, as they would tear through them like nobody's business. While the Hex Wraiths distract us, however, a unit of Black Knights do manage to get around our left flank and start tearing through those Salamanders, as we can see, bringing them quickly down by 40% of their HP, and taking out a third of the number. We're going to have to counteract that, or countercharge it as fast as we can. Skink Chief is going to move in to try to distract those Black Knights as a single entity, and we're going to try to back off a few of those Salamanders. And as we can see, 2 of them are heavily damaged now. I'm going to try to do a little bit of area denial, as a Flamestorm is summoned in the middle of some of the enemy Black Guard, or Grave Guard rather. And in the meantime, Nakai, his army-bound summoning ability has been sound on top of the enemy Necromancer. Whereas Nakai may be getting his own final battle at some point, in many ways every final battle is Nakai's battle, because he shows up to every single one and does good work. Master Necro is nearly destroyed, and having been so far away from the rest of the enemy army, he is, well, this is the perfect opportunity for Nakai to bonk him. Alright, 322 HP, one more hit. Oh, and it looks like he'll just actually disintegrate, and Nakai can start working on some of those Skelly boys instead. Ooh, looks like our most badly damaged unit of Salamanders, I believe the one that got charged by the Black Knights, is now booking it on out of there. Hopefully it'll come back, but we're going to have to see. With the Skink Chief distracting the unit of Black Knights, our other Salamanders are able to start focusing them down as well. And we started to drop bombs and fire leech bolas in the bigger blobs of enemies now, which should start working quite a bit. Again, the Grave Guard are going to be vulnerable to fire, and the fire leech bolas are pretty fantastic at dishing out damage to the blobs. That said, we are starting to get overrun in terms of the Chameleon Stalkers. Once again, there isn't a lot of melee in this army, and those units are all down to about 30% of their HP. You gotta do what you gotta do. Ooh, an enemy Terrorgeist has arrived, but I don't imagine for too long, as as Pyroxy has 1.2k weapon strength and 60 attack, and it's gonna get some help from the False Dragon Ancient Salamander, as well as the Slan Star Guardian. Every Slan that we have has a Star Guardian, and together these 3 should deal with that Terrorgeist in no time. Good move to send the Terrorgeist perhaps at the Slan, thinking that with its anti-large bonuses it'll be able to destroy it, but alas, didn't quite work out. Another unit of Ghosties has moved past our main line, as we can't hold them back, and into another unit of Salamanders. They've taken out a few of their number, 11 of their number in fact. And we can't really do too much about it, but pin them in place and hopefully allow our Fire Leech Bolas and our Skink Chief to deal with them. Amount of power has shifted to about 80% in our favor now, though we are suffering severe damage. Looks like a couple of our units of Chameleon Stalkers, in fact 3 our units of Chameleon Stalkers, have now routed. I'm going to do a little bit more area denial as we back off, and another Flamestorm in the midst of the enemy army, the only fire spell that we currently have. But frankly, allowing our army to fight this rather than winning the battle with spells is probably the more fun thing to do anyway. Alright, and those Fire Leech Bolas have been working overtime, racking up plenty of kills, 326 on this one. And it was absolutely needed. The units of the Solar Engines have also been critical in this particular fight, whereas the units of Chameleon Stalkers did break, even with their relatively high melee defense. Again, we don't have a Skink Lord leading them here, so it does make sense that they're not quite as tanky as they would otherwise be under a Red Crest. But these big boys, the Eye of the Old Ones and the other one, have been managing to hold the ground and act as anchors and linchpins for our line, and preventing plenty of the enemies from charging on through, even after the Chameleon Stalkers broke. And it looks like the last of the enemy are now done for and have begun to disintegrate. A few more fire blasts from pretty much everything does a fire blast in this army. And we'll see the last of the enemy units melt away. And I'm sure Nakai suddenly appearing, killing off the enemy necromancer and then disappearing, refusing to elaborate, helped quite a bit in this army as well, in this battle as well. And there we go. With that, the last of the enemy Graveguard melt away. Out there is... Oh, Nakai's still fighting. He found himself another unit. And, oh, he'll run out of time and disappear. Oh, wow, that's a big explosion. Hey, he didn't die. He just disappeared. Game. How dare you? He's on a limited time. Being a summoned unit and all that. Huh, I wonder if you have full mana, does he still disintegrate or is he still timed? I think with some units, with the zombies, I believe there was a thing where if you had more than 50% mana, they wouldn't start their disintegration clock. But then if you have a less, then they wouldn't. But anyway, not that it matters. Close victory, and we certainly took damage, but a great final battle for Pyroxy. Alright, there we go. A really fun fight to that time. Was certainly getting overwhelmed a little bit, and our extremely fragile salamanders were getting charged by stuff. Obviously, this army was meant to fight one-on-one, hence the sort of lack of a significant amount of melee units, but I think the main issue wasn't even really from that so much as it was from the fact that we essentially have no spells, no buffs available as yet, since it was a new army that doesn't have really levels invested in Pyroxy's, you know, well, spells and abilities and all of that. So the lack of Kindle Flame, which powers up this army significantly, the lack of the Flaming Sword of Ruin and Blazing Sword of Ruin and Cascading Fire Cloak, Burning Head, and Piercing Bolts of Burning, all of that would have been really helpful here. Alas, we didn't have it, but fortunately for us, we didn't really need it, as we were still able to triumph over the massive droves of the Graveguard. See you at the next one. Alrighty, here we go. Our objective is Mr. Helman Ghorst, one of our victory objectives, and he has teamed up with the Skaven in an attempt to bring down the legend himself, Tyrannicon, and his skinks. They have insane stats, but they're facing off against 3 stacks plus Ghorsty, who's quite annoying with that Mortis Engine effect and the heals and etc, superpowering those zombies. And the Doom Wheels should be interesting. The piles of Plague Claw should be interesting. This is a solid alliance against us. Let's see how it goes for them. Alrighty, here we go. The skink, the myth, the legend himself, Tyrannicon, will be facing off against the combined might of Helman Ghorst and I forgot which Skaven clan this was, but a pile of Skaven. Now, the enemies Skaven have brought a lot of artillery with them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 units of Plague Claws and tons of enemy range units in this army, including some Poison Wind Mortars, which is more artillery, Poison Wind Globadiers, Warplug Jezzails, and I think there's a Rattling Gun or another Jezzail unit in here somewhere. But anyway, lots of stuff basically that's going to be quite difficult for our skinks to approach, as well, especially the ones that don't have Vanguard deployment. So the units that do have Vanguard deployment will move on in immediately. Nakai will appear in the midst of the enemy formation to target the enemy artillery and try to stop them, while Titchy Witchy's raiders, bereft of Tyrannicon in this particular situation, will charge right in and through those critical units of Jezzails and the Poison Wind Mortars. A, to silence them, and B, to do as much damage as they can. Unfortunately, we do know that the Titchy Witchy's raiders can do plenty of damage. Missin's wild form on them, they're up to 146 melee attack, and they should run through the enemy infantry and artillery alike with decent ease. Here come our skink chiefs as well. They are also Vanguard deployable, and they're going to go after the Doom Wheels. Each big dino will focus a Doom Wheel with a little bit of help from Nakai, and the first Doom Wheel's down to about half HP as well. Our Chameleon Stalkers have bum rushed to the other artillery pieces and have forced the crew to flee already. Precursor weapons flying into the rats' backs as they attempt to run from the sort of Vanguard elements of the Skink Tide. Alright, and the enemy reinforcements still got about a minute until they make their way onto the map. Here comes Tyrannicon himself charging at the enemy Grey Seer. And the rest of our Red Crests are still trying to make their way here, but it looks like the Vanguard units managed to break the Skaven army before the others did, which makes sense because this Skaven army was sort of predicated on fighting with piles of melee units protecting them, since it was mostly a ranged army, almost all a ranged army. And that just doesn't work against the super fast-moving elements of our Vanguard. 122 speed on the Titchy Witchy's Raiders. What a great unit when buffed by the Red Crest. Surprisingly, their melee attack's a little bit low. The weapon strength, I mean, at only 62. I mean, it's considerably lower than a unit of Saurus, which has 100 units, but like 80 weapon strength. And granted, they are Saurus and the Titchy Witch's Raiders are Skinks, but they're Skinks riding cold ones, and I feel like, or horned ones rather, and I feel like the horned ones' bite and claws should probably do as much damage as a Saurus, especially since it's an elite unit with very low unit numbers. Not that these guys have been struggling at all in terms of dishing out damage. Only 15k damage, which isn't too crazy here, but the damage delta's gold value is 3,000, so it's quite high there. Alright. Anyway, time to reform, as Helman Ghorst has made his way onto the battlefield now with his 2 stacks, lots and lots of zombies and skeletons, and plenty of Graveguard as well. Not to worry, I'm sure we'll be able to deal. We're going to reform, and this time we'll be able to commit our units of Red Crests to the fight. Now, there is something that Tyrannicon likes to do. He doesn't stick around with the rest of the army. He charges right on and through the thickest portions of the enemy army, together with his Titchy Witchy's Raiders. And there we go, sending those zombies flying, sending those skeletons and Graveguard flying, and still moving deeper into the enemy formation. Similar to what we did last time, we will activate the protection of Quetzal on the Titchy Witchy's Raiders, but the plan was for them to break through the enemy formation and open up a path for Tyrannicon himself, which they did do through all of those units, and the path is opened and allows Tyrannicon through them and to attack Helman Ghorst himself. There we go. First bite takes about 10% of his HP, and Tyrannicon is in this. Warrior's Crest is up, and that's a plus 50, plus 25 melee attack and defense, giving 137 melee attack to him, and Helman Ghorst has no hope with only 69. Nice, but only 69 melee defense. Is going to summon some zombies to try to protect him, but it's not going to work, and is already down to about half HP. In the meantime, our Red Crests have joined the battle as well. Not just the Vanguard units this time, our Arcs of Sotek dropping snakes upon the zombies. And I was originally, over the course of the campaign thinking we'd replace the Skink cohorts with Javelins in this particular army, but eventually I ended up not bothering to do so. They were with this army so long I got kind of attached to them being in here. It felt appropriate to keep them. Anyway, it looks like Mr. Helman Ghorst is just about done for, with only 20% of his HP remaining. Couple more hits from Tyrannicon and he'll be out. Our Titchy Witchy's Raiders are still riding around, getting some more cycle charges into the back line of enemies, and there we go. Them having opened the path for Tyrannicon to kill the enemy lord and keep him away from the enemy army where he would have buffed them, is going to clinch this battle for us. And now Tyrannicon joins the Titchy Witchy's Raiders once more to work on the enemy's back lines while we obliterate the enemy in sort of straight-up combat as well. Big old bonk and mauls of those little Red Crests tearing through the armor of the Graveguard. And the Skink Tide is starting to overwhelm the tide of rats and the tide of undead. We've got the superior tide is what I'm getting at. Alright, a little bit of help from the chameleon skinks as well, while the stalkers have joined the main line to sort of fight together with the red crests. And these guys are just getting a little bit of poison dart support into the enemy's flanks. Harmonic convergence on this one unit, 99 102 melee attack and defense. But even without harmonic convergence, we got 90 melee defense on the chameleon stalkers. And 69-72 on the Red Crests, or the cohort of Sotag, which is pretty darn solid as well. I wonder how strong they'd be under Tehenowen in particular. I mean, even without Tehenowen, they're pretty darn strong. And the little Red Crest, or the Skink Army, has handled every single opponent that they faced off against throughout the course of this entire army. Wow, that zombie in particular. The Javelins really wanted that one zombie dead. Anyway, last of the enemy units melting away. The balance of power is fully in our favor now. And the army has finally joined together with Tachiwichi's raiders as we knock out the last of the enemy units together. Alright, not much to say, just waiting out the last of the enemy zombies. They haven't collapsed like puppets with their strings cut with the death of Helman Ghorst, but perhaps they should have. Alrighty, there we go. Tyrannicon once again proving that his skinks may be super fragile, but they'll still take out any opponent you throw at them. And of course, Tyrannicon himself with his personal cohort of Cold One riders, charging through the entirety of Ghorst's army to kill off Ghorst himself and prevent him from powering up the entire army with his corpse cart and just general healing powers. Absolutely crippled his army and prevented him from achieving really anything. Well done, as always, Tyrannicon, and see you at the next one. Alright, looks like we found a perfect final fight for Cytochrome, who's had a lot of screen time, probably second most screen time after Tyrannicon, and third after Nakai if we count him. But anyway, he hasn't had a crazy amount of time with his new army, and he's gonna get some good times here. Valiant defeat, casualties high. We've got Gorbad Ironclaw with Mr. Snagla Grobspit, the resident Spider-Man, or Spider-Gob, that he is here leading 3 Ragnarok Spider Flingers and a regular Ragnarok Spider. We got Giants, we got 6 units of Black Orcs, of course Gorbad himself, lots and lots of good stuff, Ruglad's Armored Orcs. Let's see if Cytochrome's army can pull this off. Should be a great time. Go. Alrighty, here we go. Gorbad and Snagla, and what's looking like a fantastic final battle for Cytochrome, who was our second lord and has been with us since the very start of the campaign. And it looks like he is ready for a good fight, as he tells his army to start moving towards that of the enemies. Plus, we've got 3 of the Flinger Ragnarok spiders. This is actually my first time seeing them, as I've never seen the AI actually build them. One of the great things, I guess, about Old World is that the additional turns, additional time spent allows some of the enemies to level more and thus get more elite units on the field like these Flingers. We got 2 here, and then we got another one out there somewhere. There it is. Alright, and that's a lot of big boys on the map, I suppose, as well. Our mage is going to fly around, drop a few spells on the enemies, a chain lightning, and, well, whatever it can, really. But the enemy numbers are such that it's probably not going to do anything too crazy. Anything too significant. Alright, and we are starting to move forward. Not going to probably be able to get too much work out of the sort of ranged aspects of our army, as in the Blessed Basties with solar engines, or just the solar engines in general, are probably going to have to do a little bit more melee work than they might have originally been intended for, being a sort of ranged support unit. Which is kind of an interesting sort of dynamic. Anyway, while the rest of the army is still slowly on the approach, the first of the enemy Black Orcs and Biggins have been forced into the fight directly with Cytochrome, and he may be weaker than Nakai is, but he's not that much weaker in the sense that he's still hitting for 806, he's still got 86 melee attack, and probably pretty darn solid capabilities. Recovery, lots of HP. And let's see, 26 ward save, 35% physical resistance. They're going to have a very difficult time with Big Boy here. And here comes his army as well. I'm gonna miss those punching animations that Nakai and the Kroxagors do. They're always very entertaining. Alright, and the enemy trolls have arrived, facing off against Saurus and Kroxagor, but that's probably a pretty bad matchup for the poor old trolls. Granted, this isn't the spear variant. Nice big old comet of Cassandora comes down into the big blob of enemies as well, heavily damaging 2 units of Black Orcs. Doom Divers coming down into the midst of our formation, probably going to do some damage to our Saurus in that manner. We've got an Arachnarok over on the left flank trying to fight against one of our Saurus Scarvets as well. Alright. And tactically, there's not too much to say about this battle. It's mostly just a big old brawl, though we are going to start summoning a couple of units in the form of the Razordon hunting packs and deal with the enemy Arachnarok flingers. They're interfering with our fights, after all. Anyway, it looks like Nakai has run out of time, and run out of time before he could kill off Gorbad and Snagla, but that's okay. Gorbad's down to about half of his HP, and while Nakai is not on the battlefield anymore, we can move Cytochrome in to finish the job. There we go. And Cytochrome has spotted Mr. Gorbad, and the two will start dueling in the midst of their brawling armies. Or at least on his boar, Mr. Gorbad is pretty tall. Gonna get your eye poked out with that big old blade on the on Cytochrome's snout. Probably not before you die though, because Mr. Gorbad's down to about 15% of his HP, and he's gonna activate his Wa, but too little, too late as Gorbad goes down. It'll be very fun to eventually play Gorbad as well. Alrighty, and, well, the bounce power is not yet in our favor, though the flingers are slowly but surely being knocked out here as the Razordons continue to work on them, stop interfering with the fighting. And yeah, we could have just charged directly towards them, but, well, no real need to do it. There we go. Down goes, I believe, the third and final of the flingers. And ooh, we have certainly started to take a lot of damage on the flanking units. Flank's always the most dangerous position of for the infantry there. These guys are down below half of their HP, and I believe the left flank's units are fairly damaged as well. This unit of Kroxes, a Gnaw of Gators, is down to, well, only lost 1 unit, but 40% of its HP as well, and 50% on this unit of Saurus. And it looks like while the flingers may be gone, the regular Arachnarok has come back. But it's just going to continue having to face off against that Carnosaur, and I just don't see that working out too well for it. Alrighty, and now the battle shifts in our favor, though we are kind of surrounded, especially in the center, where Boar Boys have managed to rout and then rally and then charge us in the back. Oh, is that Snagla? Yeah, it is. I probably should have sent Cytochrome to deal with him. I am eventually interested to see the degree to which he will buff spider units, generally speaking, because I'm going to be very fun making a proper spider stack. And next time I play Greenskins. Alrighty, and it looks like Snagla is going to book it on out of there. He's going to be very quick on that spider and small enough to make it through the formation of the rest of his units. Bounce power's at about 80% in our favor now. decently lengthy brawl as well. The Giant's still in the midst of the formation as well, being held off by the anchor of the Basti with Solar Engine, but it is down to about half of its HP, and we got about a 30%, 35% on the Saurus on that right flank now. Fortunately, it looks like the battle is pretty much done. Ooh, nice Solar Engine blast into the middle of those stone trolls, which I'm willing to bet wouldn't appreciate it, being weak to fire and all that. Interferes with that troll regeneration / troll metabolism. And they're going to book it on out of there. Burnt, poisoned, blinded, and just having a bad day. But I guess not as bad day as Gorbad, because he did. Alright, and there we go. With that, the enemy army will shatter. Balance of power will shift to 100% in our favor. And the battle, yet again, is ours. Very, very nice. And another really fun fight and a proper send-off, both for Cytochrome and I think for Gorbad himself, since we basically took all of his territory without him having the chance to really interfere too much with us. Alrighty, a really, really fun fight. A heroic victory, though a somewhat close one as well, as we certainly were taking a lot of damage. And during the fight, while the Saurus lines certainly didn't buckle, they were in danger for a fairly significant amount of the time. 69k, nice damage on the Skink Priest, lots of spell work coming down, and everybody else hovering between 20 and 30k damage. And by the looks of it, solid work from the Saurus, solid work from all the named Croxies, Croc and Roll, Gnaw of Gators, Foxy Croxies, and Pets of Steve Irwin, and decent bits of damage from the Basties with Solar Engine, though in this particular battle they had to fight in melee rather than at range. Certainly they could have blinded, I guess, the Flingers, but the Arachnarok Flingers, but felt like there wasn't too much need to do it like that. Anyway, a really nice fight for probably final fight for Mr. Cytochrome. Alright, I've been trying to find a sort of proper, another proper battle for a Chameleon and his Ripperdactyls, but I think in terms of the Vampire Coast of the Awakened, this is probably the best that we'll get. Basically 2 stacks between the full stack, the 3/4 stack, and the garrison here at Fort Topknots, and I just realized the place was walled, so maybe we're better off attacking this guy here, like so, and allowing them to move towards us. Anyway, I think this is probably the best one we'll find, because the faction is rather weak. Haven't spotted any full-fledged armies. They've been in a massive war against Cavalry, and while they're not quite winning, they're not quite losing, they're constantly losing armies, just like Cavalry is, and I guess Tomb King armies are free, so they would win in a sort of war of attrition, I take it. Anyway, we're going to jump on in on this one. I'm going to enjoy our Ripperdactyls. Colossodon Hunters, 221 weapon strength, pretty darn solid. I guess all of the Ripperdactyls are at 221 weapon strength. That's really nice. I mean, compared to 150 of the animated Hulks, which, you know, don't fly. And our Saurus Warriors are up to 80 and 91 on the Legion of Chakwa in particular, so that's getting them the rank 7 buff, so everybody here will probably be at 91. And I think we can get all the Saurus up to about 100 weapon strength with a couple more skill points, so pretty crazy. Anyway, should be fun. Let's go. Right indeed, my friend. Right indeed. Alrighty, here we go. I did promise 2 battles for the Ripperdactyl army, so this shall be the second and final one. And unlike the, well, to some degree, unlike the Skaven, which had all those Howling Warp Gales, these guys will not. And, well, they'll also have a lot of range units for our Ripperdactyls to hopefully tear through. We're going to move directly through, or over the sort of choke point, the river here that's blocking the rest of our army off, and get ready to hit the sort of first enemy stack in the back. They, of course, will have another full stack moving in with a few more units, and lots of 4 units borrowed from the Tomb Kings as well, eh? Good for them. As in from Arcan specifically. But I don't imagine that's going to be all that valuable to them. Anyway, I'm just going to speed this up while our units of our units of Saurus move on in. And there we are, going to take a few pistol shots and handgun shots to the face, but Mr. Chameleon is going to move on in. And here come the flyers. There we go, they are going to take a few volleys from the handguns, but it looks like they have enough health to survive. And then they will touch down among all those handgunner crews, while one of them starts dealing with the enemy bats up in the sky, a little bit of an aerial dance. And they should be able to take out the relatively weak bats with reasonable ease, if the bats even want to stay in that combat. Alright, there we go. With the enemy's melee units distracted by our Saurus, all the enemy's backline is going to get absolutely obliterated by all those Ripperdactyls. We can see they're all melting away, and by the looks of it, we should be able to be done with them before the reinforcements arrive. And they're still attempting to get a few of those pistol shots off, point blank or not. Ooh, and the enemy artillery have arrived as well and are starting to focus down this unit of Blessed Saurus spears over on the left flank. Gotta be careful of that while the mortars don't do any crazy damage to them. We are in a fairly sort of tight formation here, and any hits will be still fairly dangerous. There we go. And, ooh, we got deck gunners firing upon them as well, rather, and just shed about 25% of our HP on this unit. We might need to pop off a Quetzal's protection on them to keep them alive. Especially with 2 units of deck gunners, I believe, starting to focus them down. Anyway, with that, it looks like the enemy's range units have been destroyed, and it's time for the Ripperdactyls to lift off, and then loop around and hit the newly arriving 2 stacks. Away they go. They are very fun to watch, I will admit. Anyway, gonna get a flock of doom down upon the enemy's blob in the center, while we got that Quetzal's protection up on the left unit, so it doesn't take too much more damage from the enemy deck gunners. Still gonna have to deal with the enemy undead ogres, the units of animated hulks here, whose stats are, they're still pretty okay, but well, they're only okay, I should say, but they're not to be underestimated. Some units, their stats sort of belie their effectiveness. And I do really enjoy using animated hulks when playing the Vampire Coast. Anyway, looks like the bounce power is at about 50-50, so soon the battle will be decided. Our Saurus are still being distracted by the enemy melee and monstrous infantry, but it's time for our Ripperdactyls to move on in to the enemy range units as well. Gotta try to distract as many of them as possible, and especially take down those frickin' deck gunners, because they do so much damage, but at the same time are so hilariously fragile. Might be the most fragile unit in the game. I think they are. I'm not 100% on it, but they've got to be at least top 3 and possibly the most fragile. And they're not going to survive the ministrations of the Ripperdactyls for more than a few seconds. Down goes the first unit, and the second unit... Okay, down goes the second unit as well before I even finish the sentence. Lovely. Alrighty, and it's time to move the Skink Chiefs, so one of the Skink Priests, and then one unit of Ripperdactyls down upon the crews of the enemy artillery. They're gonna go silent, and most of the enemy range units are distracted now, and while we're still fighting in melee against, well, the enemy is melee with our Saurus, it looks like they're overrunning them just fine as well. But that one we could expect. Unlike the Ripperdactyls, the Saurus are not fragile by any means, and especially the Legion of Chakra. And they did help us out with that buff of theirs, the Shield of Chakra, which is an area 30 block chance and 30 missile resistance increase. Huh. Funnily enough, might be an interesting combination to use that in combination with a Slan and a Cathan War Drum. You could essentially have, if not quite immunity to missile fire, basically maximum resistances in block, because the Cathan War Drum will give you bonus armor and block as well. And the Slan has the Shield of the Old Ones. And then the Legion of Chakra will allow you to combine it with all of that. So get some shielded units and basically get a gold shield on everybody and maximum missile resistance, and good luck doing any missile damage to that army. Huh. Neat idea. I think next time I play Lizardmen, it'll be something I try. Every time I play a faction anew, I like to do sort of different army compositions that I hadn't yet done, or at least try some out, so definitely gonna try a few of those. Really enjoyed the And the Sharp Things army, the Razor Dawns and stuff army in this particular one. Anyway, heroic victory for these guys. The Ripperdactyls tear through a second enemy army in this final battle, and no more problem than they did dealing with the Skaven. Alright, there we go, a pretty darn nice fight. Had to watch out for the droves of, missile infantry firing away at our Ripperdactyls, but they not only managed to survive it, they were able to loop around them and obliterate pretty much anything they came in contact with. Same with the Shielded Saurus. Obviously, the enemy stood no chance against them in melee. Though this one did take a little bit of damage from the enemy artillery here, but nothing too major in either way. We can heal them all to full quite easily. Very, very nice. And let's see, the Ripperdactyls at 30k looks like you did pretty darn well. Well done. Anyway, kill and eat, and then this place will be destroyed and given to, I don't know, Sri Lanka, I guess? 92, 92, 84. Yes, Sri Lanka it is. Like so. Totem of Prophecy. Those are actually fairly nice with that recovery. We could give it to ooh, you can give it to a unit, can't you? I gotta remember to give one to the Shredder of Illustria, maybe. Anyway, Sri Lanka for you. Alright, Carnosaur, Stegodon. That's not for the Skink Chief, right? It's for the Skink Priest. Well, actually, the Skink Priest should be flying here. Oh, you didn't have one of these? Huh. Well, the characters all have recovery. We might want to put that on somebody else. I'll think about it. Not that it really matters all that much, as these enemies don't stand any kind of chance anyway. Go kill Mr. Mason Bloodletter. Like so, exterminate them and then proceed. It looks like this faction is pretty much broken. I still haven't seen any real full stacks other than the one we just ran into. Even Luther Harkins was heavily damaged due to fighting with Khemri, who have been doing, by the looks of it, a fairly good job. And considering they were the only defensive allies that were actually willing to align with us in this campaign, I'm pretty happy about it. Man, look at all the territory that we've got. At least we don't have to, administer all of this, because that would be, well, that would be just like the Dwarf campaign. I wish there was a count of territories. I wonder what the comparative count is for these compared to Thorgrim's. Anyway, next fight. See you at the next one. Alright, it's taken like a couple of hours of off-screen play, but I finally found the battle for our new Dino army to actually fight, and not auto-resolve, as in more than one stack in a settlement. We got the Garrison, a Black Orcs, a Giant, and a Ragnarok Spider, decent amount of range units as well, and then the army that was sitting there. Pyrrhic victory, apparently, but we'll see about that. I'm excited to try this army out. We got the Basties with Ark of Sotek as our sort of main line, and then following up with 4 of the Reviv crystals, which is enough to have everything in the army healing, and then of course the 2 feral Dreadsaurians and the 2 regular Dreadsaurians. We'll have a decent amount of physical and missile resistance on them, but they're still big old walking barns that the enemy is going to try to pincushion. Let's see if they survive. Go. Alrighty, here we go. Our Lifeslan on the field, flanked on each side by Dreadsaurians, is going to have a pretty darn fun fight, I'd wager. And I gotta remember that this is our fast Slan. He's got 61 move speed, and a Strider on top of that, so he can certainly keep pace with the Dreadsaurians. In fact, he moves faster than the Dreadsaurians due to the fact that he has Striders, so pretty darn solid. Always enjoy, I believe somebody called it speed maxing certain lords and heroes. Anyway, I usually don't like to build all Dino doomstacks because they're absolutely obnoxious and nobody can stop them, but, well, it is appropriate to see one of them moving in a finale. Alright, lots of Arks of Sotek are going to form our sort of main line. We're not going to use any army-bound abilities, so no Protection of Quetzal, no Razor Dawn summons, and no Storm of Sri Lanka. Just good old-fashioned Bite Force. Alright, and it looks like the enemy lord has arrived, rapidly losing 50% of his HP to the bite of one of the feral Dreadsaurians. We're just going to stand here for a little bit while we work on the enemy lord. A little bit of range damage isn't going to do too much. And it looks like the enemy lord wants no more part of this. I'd wager the Black Orc big boss, or the Orc war boss, rather, is pretty darn jealous of the Dreadsaurians and would love to have one of those as mounts for himself. Anyway, here comes the big old walking blender, our entire battle line towering over those Orcs who have absolutely no chance of doing anything here. This is a life slam, and until any unit reaches its healing cap, there's absolutely nothing anyone can do. Maybe if the enemy army was just composed of rattling guns and warplock Jezzails, but then we'd be able to just pop a shield of the old ones and a Pan's impenetrable pelt as we advanced to reduce the damage from all that, and then as soon as we were in the line, the enemy would have been screwed. Probably the best way, or possibly the only way to deal with an army like this, other than having a massive air force, although if you don't have sufficient buffs, the Air Force would probably run out of ammunition long before we ran out of HP, as the gyrocopters do tend to run out. Yeah, I figure probably the best way to deal with this army would probably be a Wood Elf stack, and just piles of their most elite archers, which would be backing off fast enough, I think, although Feral Dreadsaurians run at 70 speed, huh? Actually, even the Wood Elves might not be able to outrun them. Well, either way, the Orcs are certainly not outrunning them, and we got a little bit of fighting going on in the trees. I do believe there's an Arachnarok in here as well, which we're going to turn the Dreadsaurian to go after. Honestly, one bite from the Dreadsaurian would probably crush half of the Arachnarok, so yeah. Balance of power is already at about 60% in our favor, maybe 65, closing in on 70. The Orc war boss has come back, but I'd wager probably won't be coming back for too long. We've separated some of our dinos. Give the enemy a little bit more of a fighting chance rather than fighting in a Death Star, but I hardly think it will matter over much either way. Oh, and if it isn't an enemy giant, isn't that cute? Not that I expect it to be able to do anything against all the Dreadsaurians, and the fact that the enemy can't do anything about the healing that we have here. Oh, there are some anti-healing units, but like the hag stuff. And I guess poisons of various types. And the Dreadsaurian's back, once again moving towards that Arachnarok, who is surprisingly still in the fight. And it will turn towards the Dreadsaurian. Alrighty, there we go. Frankly, I'm surprised the enemy army has not shattered yet, but, well, that's just more good old-fashioned dino action for the rest of us. Alright, Dreadsaurian is turned as it is focusing down the enemy giant, who's down to about 20% of its HP. The Arachnarok's down to 30% of its HP, and our big boys are beating their big boys without any trouble. And while we have taken a little bit of damage on this Feral Dreadsaurian, about what, 10-15% of its HP? We'll just heal it up with a nice regrowth, and it'll heal up to full while bringing the Arachnarok down. Savage Giant is just about done for. Frankly, this entire enemy army is just about done for as the bounce power shifts to 90% in our favor. I do believe the enemy's leadership is dwindling, and soon the entire army will turn and shatter. Just like so. And with that, the battle is ours. We will be seeing one more Dreadsaurian fight as we will get a Dread. We still have the Shredder of Lustria in Nakai's own army. But yeah, using them in numbers is absolutely ridiculous. Admittedly, it did take a while to be able to afford them as well. Alright, you can't quite get the same kind of economy going with Nakai's faction as you can with the regular Lizardmen faction, as the regular Lizardmen, especially with the geomantic web, rather, different type of web. The geomantic web can get insane amounts of cash in their economy. Not quite to the dwarven level, perhaps, but still insane amounts of cash once you start buffing everything up. Love fighting in the Darklands, though. Alrighty, there we go. Armies like this always feel a little unnecessary, perhaps, because, I mean, they're so obnoxiously strong, but they are fun to watch, outside of me not liking building doomstacks, generally speaking. And I tried to keep it as reasonable as possible. I mean, we're using Bastillodons, by and large, that make up more than half of the army, or exactly half of the army, as our line troops, and kept it to a mere 4 Dreadsaurians, 2 Feral, 2 not. So, as reasonable as it was gonna be. One of the Dreadsaurians racked up 46,000 damage, pretty darn solid there. Arcs of Sotek did well as well with all of those vortexes of theirs. Our speedy Slan here, moving faster than most of the dinos, was able to keep everybody healed up. A little bit of damage on the Saurus Scarvet, but otherwise nothing to be concerned about. Alright, here we go. Everyone is getting their final fight, and it is finally time for Ondekon's turn. I'm going to quick save, because it's been many turns looking for one, and you never know when a crash happens. Though this campaign has been completely stable compared to the Dwarf campaign, which is weird, because it's using all the exact same mods, so it must be something about the version of Old World that Thorgrim is using. But anyway, Ondekon deserves his final fight, and it's a really fun army. I really love this one with the piles of the Razordons, the sort of sharp things army, chucking sharp things at the enemy, the skink horts with javelins, the feral trogs, the Razordon hunting packs in general, but also the Amaxon barb, and then of course the spike and hekachonk stegodons as well. A really fun one. I think counting this one, we've got, what, 2 more final fights to be had? One for Talashbach the Thunderer, and then one for Nakai. Yeah, that's not the one to forget. Anyway, let's do this. Should be pretty fun. We got Black Orcs, we got Biggins, we got 2 Giants and an Arachnarok, some Trolls, plenty of Boar Boys. Oh, actually, more than some Trolls. We got plenty more Trolls here. Some Mangle Squigs, some more Trolls. Yeah, looks like Pyrrhic Victory. We'll see about that. Go. Alrighty, here we go. I love this army, and the content, his love of chucking pointy objects at people is going to be pretty entertaining, as it usually is. It's kind of similar to the Axe Storm army of the Dwarfs in Thorgrim's campaign, and I'd wager that the Axe Rangers and the Goblin Hewers would work quite nicely with the Razordon hunting packs, who, similar to the Axe Rangers, have bleed on them. Yeah, now, usually, or previously, when we fought with this army, we did a lot more sort of kiting the enemy around, a little bit of skirmishing, a little bit of run and gun, but we're not going to do that here. We very much can. In fact, we could probably win the entire battle without allowing the enemy to even close the distance, but we're going to wait for the enemy to move on in and into range here as well. Just fight them as a sort of battle line rather than as a half skirmisher army. Just because this is the only way to really give them a sporting chance. The enemy army would be otherwise far too slow to be able to actually reach us and make their way through the bleeding, poisoning, bone-crushing sort of elements of this army. As look at that, Orc Biggins down to 3 speed with all of that speed reduction. And of course with poison and bleed on them as well. So they're having a bad time is what I'm getting at. Alright, now we could just do that, get a few volleys off, back off, get a few volleys off, back off, and the enemy army would never be able to do anything, but we're gonna let them. Sit around. We will, however, not stop our units from firing. That's certainly not something we do, and while the enemy can get to us, they are going to take quite a bit of damage while attempting to do so. Black Orcs down to about 50% of their HP. And here come those javelins. Even in the end of the game, in the late game, the javelin-throwing skink cohorts are absolutely not to be underestimated. They can dish out plenty of damage. And will this unit of Black Orcs be able to reach us? 26 speed, not too bad. 18 speed on the other one. Oh, and Bleed also has an incoming healing modifier as well. Could have helped some of the enemies against our Dino stack, that's for certain. So basically, various bleeds, various poisons, and then whatever the things in the woods do. Alright, and it looks like the first of the enemy elements have slowly, just struggling to reach us, but have slowly finally managed to reach us. We also have the Skink Oracle and our Troglodons in this army, and remember, this is the army where our Troglodons have Frenzy on them, so they're quite a bit tankier. With Stand Your Ground, the Trogs are up to 97 melee attack and 96 melee defense. Even without Stand Your Ground, their melee attack is still 97. 90 armor, Frenzy, plenty of damage both melee and missile and poison application on all of that. So the Lactas are pretty nice sort of fighters in this main line. So even if we do allow the enemy army to reach us, how effective that'll be remains to be seen. The only hope they have is dishing out damage to the little skinks. And maybe the Razordons as well, it's a possibility. And they'll bring some of them down, I'm sure. Though in this army we do summon some Razordons because as in not just to chase enemies down as we've been doing otherwise, because it's a Razordon army and you gotta have as many Razordons as Razordoningly possible. That's my motto. Alrighty, and looks like some Warboys attempt to go around, but they will break as they attempt to charge the Razordons. The balance of power has shifted to about 70% in our favor. And as enemy units back off and leave the melee, they'll just get more sharp things tossed into their backs. Or their faces, whichever. We're not picky about what we toss sharp things at here. That's also my motto. Alrighty, and the battle is very nearly ours at this point. Our line of Razordons doing just fine, and with that, the enemy army will shatter and only the unbreakable Razor Squigs? Mangler Squigs. Want some Razor Squigs? Some Mangler Squigs will remain on field, though that I'd wager not for too long. The Amixon Barb charges in and brings down the last of the Mangler Squigs, and with that, the last of the enemy units are destroyed. Actually didn't really take a lot of damage, even with allowing the enemy to charge in. Yeah, pretty good. Good job, Undercunt. I really like this army. I think I'll bring it back next time I play Lizards, with maybe some minor modifications. This army could probably use a couple of javelin chucking flyers, because the Pterodon riders with spears obviously also chuck javelins, so we're missing a unit that could potentially chuck sharp things, and that shall not stand. But anyway. Alrighty, there we go. I really enjoyed this army, and as we've seen there, as we leveled it up, as it became stronger, it is now viable to sort of hold the line as opposed to acting like a pseudo run-and-gun army, which we were doing with it before, because you could do quite a bit with the Razordon hunting packs with, well, pretty much every unit in the army. Move forward, kill half the enemies, back off, rinse and repeat, but allowing the enemy to actually hit our lines and still survive with very minimal losses, less than 10%, certainly shows that this army can now hold its own in that regard. Fun battle, and I guess we bid farewell to Handicant as we have with the various other lords before. Well done to Spike and Hekachonk, and wow, 37k. Pretty darn solid. I've really been impressed with the Razordon hunting packs in this particular campaign. I've really grown to love the unit almost as much as the skinks. Lots of really good stuff in the Lizardmen roster, but anyway. Alright, we've arrived at the second last battle, and it will be Tlashbok the Thunderer, who is our Tepok-themed army. Certainly left it to last, but the idea is, obviously Tepok is the Coatl lord, the Quetzalcoatl equivalent or analog of Warhammer, and hence we got a lot of Coatl. We got Tlashbok the Thunderer, who is a community canon legendary lord associated with thunder and lightning, and so he has the spirit of Tepok and the Thunderous One, Ancient Stag. Lots and lots of lightning, basically, from him. We've got all the Coatl who have Urnon's Thunderbolt. We have the Thunderous One, which has Rod of the Storm. We have the Spirit of Tepok, which has some kind of banishment. We've got the 5 casters, 4 of which are Skink Priests of the Heavens, all of which have maxed out Urnon's Thunderbolt for, more Urnon's Thunderbolts, and each one has a Rod of the Storm as well for even more lightning all over the place. Plus, again, it's a Tepok-themed army, so we've got a bunch of the Blessed Temple Guard with the blessing, or blessed spawning of Tepok to act as our main line. And what this gives them is, I believe it is 40% or 50%. Let's find out if I can find it in here. Yeah, it's 50% spell resistance on top of perfect vigor, and the idea is that even if we, clip ourselves with Comets of Cassandora or a Lightning, these guys won't take too much damage, because they got 60 spell resistance base, and then this activates when you're actually on the map, so they've got 110 spell resistance, so you can't even reduce it below minimum. At least, I don't think you can, so even if we clip them, it won't be too bad. And we got a couple of allied units, a couple of Wuxing War Compasses, and go figure, for a couple of uses of that Celestial Lightning, and even more of it. Before we jump into Tlashbok's first and final only battle, I did unfortunately not find Oshiotla. It's been a lot of turns. It's turn 137, and we've moved all the way like this up towards Oshiotla to try to find him, and we've arrived at his main province where he starts, and he's not there. It's all Cornate, and these guys aren't even at war with him, so it looks like he's been wiped out, just as the last defenders have. A bit unfortunate, but, well, it is what it is. I mean, we've been doing pretty well for ourselves, even if all of the other lizards are gone. I mean, the amount of territory we currently hold is pretty ridiculous. Granted, we don't need any of it, and we got plenty of territory in the in the realm of chaos as well, or specifically in the realm of Nurgle. All of this, we basically wiped out Manfred, or Pyroxy did, after that battle, and Manny never really recovered all that much, especially with Cavalry pressing him. We've got the Awakened on the ropes, and the whatchamacallums. Caravan of Blue Roses, that's the one. Completely destroyed now, so we will achieve short victory as soon as these guys are destroyed with their last settlement, and Chameleon is on the approach to do so. Anyway, for now, second last cinematic battle of the campaign, Tlashbok. I've been waiting for this to get you in there, so let us declare war on this little faction, Black Spider Greenskins. Don't bother calling your allies to help, since we're looking to wipe them out pretty much immediately. Like so. And, I wonder. This isn't a magical forest, is it? I don't know. I guess we're about to find out. Go for it. It says there's walls, but I'm pretty sure... Oh, there is actually walls here. Huh. I thought there wouldn't be. Alright, fine. Back off. And just attack this guy. They'll definitely sally out and fight us on the field. There we go. Pyrrhic Victory casualties high. We've got all 3 stacks there. We've got a Ragnarok, a giant, bunch of trolls, black orcs, biggins, and then 2 full stacks of various orcs, all of which have gotten a decent amount of veterancy over the course of the campaign. Now, in terms of what we got to do... Spirit of Tepok has 10,000 HP, Thunderous One... let's give the Thunderous One the Totem of Prophecy, maybe. To allow it to heal up. Tlashbok can have the... Oh, actually, you know what? No, let's give this to the Spirit of Tepok. Let's give the War Banner to the Thunderous One. Allow it to do more damage. Lichbone Pennant to Tlashbok. Sun Standard of Chotek, I guess, since we're using you to support maybe the Skink Oracle. Although it's probably going to be at range. You know what? Let's... it's missile resistance to the assigned unit as well. And let's put it up front in one of the Temple Guard units, and then the Razor Standard on the other one. There we go, that looks pretty good to me. Let's quick save this, because it's been another like 10 turns, and I really don't want it to crash, and have to redo those again, especially considering how long the end turns take. And let's do it, 3 stacks. Alrighty, here we go. This is probably the army that I was most excited for in terms of getting its fight. It's a really nice one. Flashback the Thunder is also one of my favorite community canon legendary lords. He really earned that name in the Croc Gar campaign, where he debuted. Plus, it's just a generally interesting army. I also absolutely love Coatl as units. They're really, really fun as well, and really quite effective. And the whole lightning thunder thing that we got going on is just generally speaking a pretty interesting dynamic. We have 16 uses of Urnon's Thunderbolt that we can essentially use at once, which I'm very excited to see. Plus, it's an anti-spell damage army. We can see we got 110 spell resistance on the Blessed Temple Guard, and other units have plenty, I'm sure, as well. 40 on the big boys, but, well, they're not likely to take too much damage from enemy spellwork as well. Plus, super rare to use the whooshing compasses, and we're certainly going to do that here, because A, they will increase our spell intensity due to the mastery of the elemental winds, which bumps it up to, I believe, I want to say 130? Intensity 130%, yeah, so we've got those guys bumping up our Urnon's Thunderbolts even more, and of course they've got Celestial Lightning as well. More Thunderbolts. Anyway, it looks like we're going to have to speed this up a little bit as the enemy is waiting for its reinforcements to arrive. As to whether they actually want to charge towards us remains to be seen. And what we specifically want to do with this army is essentially to allow the enemy to blob up, so we're going to try that. We will, however, want to try to force the enemy to move towards us, so might as well have the Coatl do it for us. I'm going to just find a unit or two, touch down, and annoy the enemy until they're ready to play with the rest of our army. All right, and all the Coatl moving together make them look like a, I don't know, like a 5-headed dragon or something. Alright, and down they go. Looks like they found some squigs here. Of course, the poor little squiggies have no chance, as the Coatl spit lightning at them and just tear them to shreds in seconds. Alright, and hopefully this will be sufficient to annoy the enemy. Looks like a second unit of squiggies has moved on in as well. Kind of hard to see the fighting here, but this is mostly just to get the enemy army annoyed and kick the ant hill so that they move towards us. Ah, there we go. There's that lightning breath animation, not just the lightning spit animation. And let's see, is the enemy army's main stack annoyed yet? Still milling around. They might actually just be milling around while waiting for their reinforcements to position themselves so that they can attack us. I mean, technically we attacked them, so I still think that this is probably necessary. Alrighty, and I think we're just about done here. The enemy is starting to mill around in a different way than it was before, and I think that means we are free to back off, and they'll start moving towards us. Took a little bit of damage on a couple of our Coatl, but it shouldn't matter whatsoever. We have the Reviv Crystal, which will heal them up, and if we need it, we have the Oracle able to cast Earthblood and Lifebloom to heal them up even further. There is a unit of Goblin Wolf Rider Archers around there, which we can't really do too much with most of our units, as they're just going to be too slow to catch them, so the enemy's going to keep annoying us. Granted, a single one of these units isn't going to be sufficiently annoying for us to be too concerned with, but we might want to knock out a few of the enemy range units with summoned Razor Dons, just because. I don't want them to interfere with the whole lightning thing that we're planning. Anyway, here come the enemies. They're going to take a few hits. We're going to just reposition ourselves slightly. Make a thunder box, lightning box, whatever. Similar to Lord Croak. And looks like the first of the enemy units will charge on our left flank. We're going to move the thunderous one in to defend against them. But it looks like the orc boys with spears aren't going to charge too far. And either way, we do want the Temple Guard to play around a little bit as well, not just to have our other units deal with everything else. Because in Lord Croak's army, the Temple Guard are a little bit less inclined to actually do all of the damage there. But that certainly isn't the case here. And they got pretty darn solid stats. Good luck to the enemy attempting to break through them. And again, the plan is so that the enemy can't clip us with spells. Anyway, the enemy range units are getting a little bit annoying, so we'll get the Stormer Sri Lanka through them. Looks like the first of the lightnings used in this particular battle will be from the Thunderous one, as it has sort of an area effect where it randomly causes lightning all around it. And it's time to begin the lightning, the Uranon's Thunderbolts all over the place. There we go. Alrighty, and all along the main enemy line on both sides. All the Uranon's Thunderbolts will just keep on coming down. And we got a lot of armor-piercing damage there, so even if the enemy uses Black Orcs or whatever, this is going to be a pretty bad time for them. Lovely. And yes, I'm not committing to Coatl yet. I wanted to allow our units to do that and even follow it up with a Comet of Cassandora there. Sort of heralding the comet with all of the lightning. Anyway, a nice little bit of damage. We wanted to clear a few of the enemy units out because there's still a nearly full stack ready to move on in. And the Coatl can join the fight at any moment, but we've seen them fight a little bit and I want to see everybody else fight. Alrighty, they are, however, free to move out a little bit and move towards some of those enemy archers. I'm going to clear some of them out. Temple Guard are still absolutely doing fantastic at holding back the droves of enemies. The ball lightning coming down from the Spirit of Tepok, who has a sort of similar ability to the Thunderous one, where it also gets more lightning around it. So even discounting the Uranon's Thunderbolts, we have other forms of lightning that we've got available to us. Like so. Well done to the Spirit of Tepok. And we're doing this while we're waiting for the cooldown on all those Uranon's Thunderbolts so we can go for another round. Flaneshy giggle. And remember, the Temple Guard have been fighting non-stop this entire time pretty much and have started to rack up plenty of kills. Enemy's got the Wa, but we've got healing and about 150-ish kills on all the Temple Guard. And here comes the next volley of lightnings over on both flanks. There we go. Beautiful, absolutely beautiful sight. And the Tepok has the Spirit of Tepok has the banishment ability. Tepok is actually associated with the lore of light rather than the lore of the heavens, which is quite interesting because he's represented by the Coatl, and the Coatl have all these lightning abilities and attacks and stuff. But he's all about the lore of light. In fact, the skink priests of Tepok take lore of light as lore, which isn't even available to us in the game, is it? Well, anyway, a lightning will suffice, and we've got plenty of it. As more Uranon's Thunderbolts come down, but the enemy's got plenty more reinforcements as well. More Black Orcs moving onto the field, and we still have a fair few enemies to clear. This is turning out to be a pretty fantastic fight for Tlashbok. And a heck of a brawl for the Temple Guard as well. Alright, I gotta move out a few of those Coatl. Now they're sort of just hanging around, occasionally moving in, killing a few jerks, and then moving right back in. But we don't want them to do all the work either. So just here and there. Besides, they can also sort of move away from the enemy army, make sure that they kill off any enemy units that are routing and not shattered. make sure that they're gone for good, and then come back to the main enemy army where when more reinforcements blob up and are ready for a few more lightning drops on top of them. Alright, lonely little unit of orc boys moves in on the left flank to fight the Thunderous One and another one of our units of Temple Guard. And I'd wager the unit won't be fighting for too long, as within seconds it loses all of its HP and books it on out of there. Massive pile of corpses around every single unit of Temple Guard at this point, but we're going to be adding plenty more as more enemy orcs are moving in. Coming down that hill, and we've still got reinforcements on the way, and we got a giant and Ragnarok controls that are still on the menu. And seeing some Saurus/Temple Guard action here is, I think, was very much warranted. And trolls nearly managed to make it past the Blessed Temple Guard or use their mass to charge through, but just managed to get stopped. Alright, how are those units? Getting ready to blob up in a few more lightning uses upon you? In just a little bit, I see 2 more units of Black Orcs with full HP moving in from the reinforcements. How are our Temple Guard doing? Look, mostly full HP. They certainly have all of their units available to them. There are only 60 units in a blob of Temple Guard compared to 100 units of, in a unit of Black Orcs. Alright, it looks like this unit will be the one that the Black Orcs are charging towards. Good luck to them. They're gonna need it. After witnessing all those droves of units get electrocuted and all that thick armor that the Black Orcs are using, probably doesn't bode well for them. Does the metal have to be ferromagnetic for lightning to be drawn to it? Like, will lightning strike aluminum, or does it have to be a ferromagnetic item? Or item, metal. If anybody knows, I'm just curious. Anyway, Black Orcs have arrived, and here comes the lightning. I'm still willing to bet that all the crude metals that they have are probably willing to draw a few of those Thunderbolts, and it looks like the Thunderbolts clear out both full HP Black Orcs units fairly quickly. We are sort of running out of lightning uses, so we just drop a few of the regular, well, overcast Thunderbolts from our Skink Priests. And the Black Orcs still unable to find any purchase in the Blessed Temple Guard. Up to 460 kills on these guys now. A little bit less on these guys, but that's alright. I guess this unit was sort of on the flank, so it's going to be dealing with more enemies. Coatl are still having a very fun time flying around, dropping both spells and spitting lightning at people as they do, as one does. And acting sort of together. Coatl are kind of like... what are they called? Like manticores or single-entity great eagles. You're better off using them sort of in smaller contingents. 5 is a little bit too many. You're better off doing 2 and 3 for Coatl and manticores. But it just allows them to sort of mince infantry together and keep each other safe rather than surrounded. Though the Coatl have the great animation of theirs that essentially makes them into flying tomb scorpions, making them really hard to pin down. Anyway, wouldn't you know it, we got more orcs, and they just keep coming. This time with a Ragnarok and a giant in tow, so we're going to have to deal with a few more of them, and well, we've got a few more lightnings to throw their way. Absolutely beautiful. More Ornon's Thunderbolts come down on the main line of enemies. Tlashbach the Thunderer really living up to his name as he moves out to fight the enemy Ragnarok, but have his Carnosaur munch on a few of the enemy Black Orcs as well. Alrighty, not much to say in terms of tactics about this battle. We're just purposely sort of hanging around waiting for the enemy to break themselves, attempting to breach our lines, and they very much are. And ooh, looks like the giant has actually managed to make it through. Manages to kill off a few of those Temple Guard as well, but they will probably be resurrected by the Reviv crystals, because we're keeping everybody nice and healthy with the combination of the Reviv crystals and the healing from the Skink Oracle. We're also going to pop Vissen's Wild Form and Stand Your Ground at the same time, giving the Temple Guard ridiculous stats: 122 armor, 98 melee defense, and the enemy has no more hope of reaching their lines than they ever did. And of course, while they're pinned in place by the Temple Guard, the lightnings, the banishment, it all keeps coming down upon them. And the enemy has, and we aren't damaging ourselves because of all those Tepok blessings. Protection from magic and all that being his thing. Alrighty, and there we go. I do believe the enemy army, seeing the massive losses that it's taken and the fact that our army is completely unharmed with full HP, the enemy army will break, shatter, and the battle will be ours. A little bit more playtime for the Coatl as the enemy runs, just because we can, and while we haven't been using the Storm of Sri Lanka throughout the main battle, although it kind of does make sense in terms of the theme as well. This army is kind of all about Storm as well, so yeah. But I do like to use these when enemies run, because just to clear out a few more enemies so that we don't have to fight them again. As you can never trust the auto-resolve. Anyway, there we go, an absolutely wonderful fight and massive amount of lightning for Talashbach the Thunderer. We'll be seeing you again, sir. Ah, there we go. That was absolutely beautiful. Coatl are always so fun to watch, and just the whole lightning theme that we've got going with this army is just fantastic and super cinematic as well, with the enemy approaching and the lightning coming down into those piles of enemies. And it also, because Urnon Thunderbolt isn't a sort of crazy hot damage dealing, or at least crazy high AoE damage dealing spell, it nicely distributes the damage among all of our units rather than sort of sticking it to one caster, because I mean, like 2/3 of our army has a lightning spell or ability or item on it, and everybody's casting it. Plus the Temple Guard held off and destroyed absolutely massive numbers of enemies, 88,000 damage and 608 kills on this one, for example, and these guys were low veterancy just starting out as well. Absolutely glorious. And I do believe this faction is done for, but let's just make sure. I mean, it's not like we need to fight them again, or at least we shouldn't need to. Pyrrhic victory. Yeah, whatever. They're dead anyway. Yeah, just a little bit of a shame that we got this this army so late in the campaign, but it's such a strong army, like some of our later game armies, that kind of like the all-Dino army. There's really nothing that would really be able to stand against it anyway, so it is what it is. Anyway, very, very nice Talashbach. Fortunately, you are a legendary lord and legendary cannon lord, and thus you will be back every time we play the Lizards. Anyway, that was the second last fight. We've got all the territory we want, and basically nobody else needs to move. We got one more fight to do, and that will be the final battle of the campaign, and of course we'll save it for Nakai himself, as well as we got to get short victory. Our techs are also pretty much complete. At the very least, we're only missing the recruit techs, and we are hardly recruiting anymore, and thus don't really need them. Pretty much have done everything, and it takes like 10 turns to... this place is really cool. Man, I've never looked at this place before. What the heck? This is really cool. Damn. Alright, every time, frickin' old world, man. Every time you look somewhere, you find something new and just amazing looking. Devs, come on, look at this map. You gotta try a little harder, at least with regards to some of these locations. Anyway, I forgot what I was saying, but see you at the next one. Alrighty, we've arrived finally at the end. I decided to trek all the way from here towards Jarnagrund in the hopes of having a super elite stack of Mr. Gorth the Cruel there, plus the garrison of Jarnagrund. Unfortunately, I don't know where Gorth the Cruel is, but he's not here, and there's nobody here, so it's just the garrison on its own, and the AI is not willing to fight our full army because, I mean, it would be like low casualties, easy win. So, what I decided to do for this is go back to basics. Nakai, his heroes, and his 2 regiments of renown, the Cohort of Watla, Sacred Croxagors, and the Shredder of Lustria, will attack Jarnagrund together without the healing, without the skinks, and without the 6 units of Croxagors. And this shall have to just be enough, and plus it should make it a fairly entertaining fight as everybody faces off against each other. I wonder if I should give you a Lichbone Penance so we can give the Shredder of Lustria magical damage to deal with that Kadai Destroyer, as opposed to the Totem of Prophecy. Though I suppose on the other hand, everybody's going to be focusing it down with all that all that range fire, and maybe the heal is worth more than the magical damage. Yeah. Well, this guy got magical damage, so we can use him for that purpose. Anyway, this is going to be the final fight. At least I hope it is, because we have to assume that the enemy will actually attack us with only a third of a stack here. We're about to find out. Otherwise, everything else is maxed out. We've got the short victory achieved, and apparently 10,000 is as much Old One's favor as you can hold at one time, because it's been like that for a few turns now, and we're maxed out on that as well. Just looking around for good fights, and this is as close, I guess, as we're going to get. So Nakai, back to basics. Let's hope that the enemy tries to fight this. Alrighty, luckily they will be sallying out. I mean, not surprisingly, they've got a full stack, we've got a third of a stack, and it's Jarnagrund's garrison, so about as good as we can expect from an enemy garrison. Infernal Ironsworn, Infernal Fireglaves, Infernal Guard with Fireglaves, whatever, Kadai Destroyer. Gotta watch out for that Death Shrieker. Hopefully it doesn't bring down the Shredder of Lustria while we move towards it, though I suppose Nakai moves so fast now. He's at 103 speed. I did manage to get the Tretch Defeat trait, so a 103 speed with Strider, 1.5k weapon strength, 136 charge, just absolute insanity. If we were to replace the Ohm Shards, he would also have a 31 rather than 15 ward save, but frankly, so far, he hasn't really needed it. Anyway, the final battle has come, so let's enjoy this one more time, and I feel like it'll make sense for Nakai to his army to dwindle as he prepares to sort of disappear and then, you know, show up again in 1,000 years or so. Alrighty, here we go. Final fight for Nakai the Wanderer. The numbers of units in his army has dwindled as Nakai is meant to wander and randomly show up in places, and only the toughest of lizards can hope to keep up with his wandering. So, this is what we've got left, and he randomly trekked all the way to Jarnagrund to take out the Chaos Dwarfs just because he can. He's got 103 speed and Strider now, 1.6k weapon strength, and then 110 melee attack before any buffs that he has. So, enemy unit of Chaos Dwarf Warriors. He's just going to charge right through them, as he does. We've seen this throughout the campaign, but I never got and never will get tired of watching him do this. Absolutely fantastic. You gotta love Nakai's animations. And in the meantime, while we've already seen the Dread Saurians, we've got the Shredder of Lustria, who has become Nakai's pet here, getting on the battlefield as well. And besides, with the smaller numbers of units that we have in this particular army, that'll give everybody a chance to play around a little bit more. And rather than sort of stay together in a big old blob, everybody's going to go for different targets. Anyway, Nakai's going to keep the enemy Kadai Destroyer busy for a few seconds until the Shredder of Lustria arrives and goes after the Kadai, while Nakai moves away. Oh, he repositions himself so dang fast. It's fantastic. Look at him. And there he goes. His animations, I think, are barely able to keep up with him at this point. And one bonk hits the enemy lord down to 50% of his HP, and the second bonk kills him instantly. Oh, it's absolute insanity. He's made it to Imric levels. Imric was able to bring down lords in 2 hits, and it looks like Nakai is there now as well. It's absolutely fantastic. Shredder of Lustria versus the big old Kadai Destroyers, both fantastically cool-looking units, generally speaking. An absolute clash of the titans here. Although the Shredder doesn't have magical damage, we do have recovery on it, and there's just no way that it's going to go down here. Plus, it can step away for a few seconds and kill off a few of the enemy infantry. The Dread Saurians are more of a big old anti-infantry monster anyway. Alright, and we've got the cohort of Watla having joined in on the fight as well, fighting some Infernal Ironsworn. And some Bull Centaur Renders as well. But this is the Regiment of Renown of Kroxigors, super buffed up by Nakai and by our techs and everything, and they're pretty darn strong. 90 melee attack, magical, and armor sundering as well. Tons and tons of weapon strength and armor, though of course that's buffed up by the Vissen's wild form. Anyway, I believe Nakai's just waded into another enemy unit. Though it doesn't really matter because he has enough mass and enough speed and acceleration to just go wherever he wants, whenever he wants. Frankly, it's kind of hard to keep pace with him. And I believe he's found an enemy Infernal Castellan here, or a Demonsmith Sorcerer. There's just going to be a bloody wet spot on the ground because that was 2 hits. And one, oh my lord, he just takes his head off with a sweep of that big old mace of his. I guess maybe this is why it doesn't matter that the Ohm Shards, one of his legendary items, are kind of terrible, because he's already so strong that it makes absolutely no difference whatsoever. Just out of curiosity, he's got 5,000 mass on top of that speed. Which is, I guess, why the enemy just can't pin him in place. Alrighty, and back through, and well, if it isn't some Bull Centaur Renders, wow. He knocks out 4 Bull Centaur Renders with a single charge. That's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. I don't even know how that Bull Centaur Render died. Nakai just looked at him and he just dropped by the looks of it to me. And didn't seem to have swung his maul or anything. Beautiful. Or I guess it's a mace rather than maul. Or actually, I think he's using a maul, but he's doing it one-handed. I mean, I think it's called the mace of something or other. But I mean, if you give that thing to a Saurus or a skink, it's obviously going to be a maul rather than a mace. So. And the Kroxigors use tools, so they generally use mauls as, well, they basically use construction equipment. But anyway, they are construction equipment. Anyway, with that, the battle is very nearly ours. Advance power is at about 90% in our favor. Our 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 units of dinos, plus 1 unit of Kroxigors, have each one been fighting a different unit, and each one has been winning. Hardly surprising, though. I love all the colors on the Shredder of Lustria as well. And all the gold and stuff. Fantastic unit. Ooh, some point-blank fire-glaive shots. I hear those telltale pew-pews from them. As to whether that's going to do too much, it remains to be seen. Well, the Shredder of Lustria did lose about 20% of its HP, but it's got recovery and we can heal it up as needed. Anyway, Nakai, where are you, buddy? Killing stuff? Go figure. Alright, and I do believe the enemy army is now in the process of shattering one more stroll through the enemy ranks for Nakai. And yeah, and this is why it's been basically impossible at this point in the campaign to fight anything that remotely challenges Nakai. This is Jarnagrun's garrison. We took out 2/3 of Nakai's army, and all of his Kroxigors, basically, both of his Reviv crystals, and the garrison still stands. Absolutely no chance. And just trekking around the world looking for a fight worthy of Nakai is quite difficult. Anyway, with that, the last enemy army shatters, and having done basically no damage whatsoever to Nakai and a little bit of damage to the rest of the army, the battle is ours. Apparently a close victory, but I don't see in what possible way it could have been close or was close. And this is, I guess, the last sight for a few of the those Chaos Dwarfs, and I guess the last sight of this campaign as well. Goodbye, Nakai. I love you, man. We'll be seeing you again someday, I'm sure. Alright, there we go. I would have liked a bigger final battle in terms of enemy unit numbers, like 4 stacks or something like that, but frankly it was basically impossible to find. This is the closest thing I could think of, as it was fairly close to Nakai, and it would have otherwise taken hours to get there, and it'll take hours to get anywhere else. So, besides, it was still a very fun little fight. We were outnumbered by the enemy 3-1 with our 33 units versus over 1,000. And wait, 33? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 plus 8 is 14. Not 33. What are you talking about, game? Okay, I don't know what the heck the game is talking about. It didn't summon any units either. What are you talking about? Huh? Is it... I think it might be counting the crew on the Shredder of Illustria? That's gotta be it, right? Which is weird, because I'm pretty sure that crew can't actually die unless the Shredder of Lustria dies. Well, either way, it was a pretty darn fun campaign, fun fight, but there you have it. We've reached the end. The campaign comes to a close. Been a very, very battle-heavy one, with every episode seeing basically lots and lots of fights. Certainly more than usual, just due to the sort of horde nature of Nakai, and it's just been generally pretty entertaining fighting all these fights. A little bit like playing Chaos, I guess. Tyrannicon has joined the community canon after being an absolute legend of a skink this run, so we're going to be seeing him again on this channel someday. Otherwise, we completed, I guess, pretty much everything that we wanted to complete, conquered huge tracts of territory, and no enemy could hope to stand against us at this point. It was essentially just becoming tedious to try to find a fight that would even offer a remote challenge to Nakai. But yeah, I think he's proved his domination of everybody, and he'll return in 1,000 years when he's needed once more. I hope you guys enjoyed Nakai's run. Thanks for sticking with it all the way to the end. All glory to the algorithm, and see you at the next one.